Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our ReWild Long Island webinar, Make Your Own Great Garden Sign by Dianna Facci. I'm so happy to see you all today. Spring is all around us, and some of us has already started executing their plans for the year's garden. Many others have placed orders for native plants and trees and waiting to pick their orders up. A big question for many of us is how do we let our neighbors know that whatever is happening in our yards and gardens are being done with intention? A simple answer might be an attractive yard sign, a garden sign. Showing us how to make one today is Dianna Facci, an interior designer in the hospitality industry for more than 25 years. Dianna is also an avid ReWilder. Her love of gardening, growing her own organic vegetables, and simply being among native plants, birds, and bees provide respite from the challenges of the day. Diana's hope is that more people become as passionate as she is by seeing spring's first butterfly, picking summer's first vegetable, reconciling fall leaves as habitat for our precious pollinators, and welcoming the garden's winter rest. So without further delay, I'll hand it over to Dianna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This is so exciting. I'm so thrilled that you all want to make your own signs, and this is wonderful. And the reason I made my own sign was, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So at the time, 3 years ago, we were fairly, new. I mean, it's certainly a revolution right now, but there weren't a lot of options at the time. And I decided that, you know what, I'm going to let my neighbors know that I'm growing my grass lawn by making a sign, a fun sign, and just having fun with it. I felt as though the in making the sign too, it's a way to anticipate springtime, and also it's something to look forward to and be excited for the new season. So in gathering all of these things that I thought I could work with in my sign making activity, there's a certain excitement about the springtime, and of course, No Mo May is wonderful because so many wonderful. For instance, in my experience, I've seen a lot of chickweed grow the month of May without mowing. I've seen my native violets growing all around. I see the tall grasses that hide the fledglings from my feral cats in my backyard. So there were so many wonderful benefits to this. There are now wonderful signs all around Long Island. This one in particular in Oyster Bay, where it lists all of the advantages for growing your lawn wild, and they're increasingly seeing around large landscapes where they're designated meadows that are going to be growing there for and not being mowed. So it's wonderful to see this. My signs are, there's no fear in it. There's only fun. I think also, being creative is not a talent. It's the ability to be free and to express yourself. And there's no right or wrong way here. Just have fun with it. I decided to keep it at the beginning. My first sign said, "Please excuse the weed. I'm feeding the bees." I wanted to kind of tell people what I was doing. So I did that sign this way. The second one, I just decided to say "No Mo May" and ReWild down the support stick that you see there. And the third one, I got a little bit more creative, and I just embellished it quite a bit. And I'll show you how to do those embellishments as well in this presentation. The suggested tools, scissors, clippers, glue gun, your background. You know, the middle photograph is the background is actually a product box that I received that lent itself to saying no mow May, because it was the elements in it were all circular. So I decided to use that as my backdrop. The sign on the right is actually, and I'll show that later in the presentation, it's actually a product box also, but the inside of a product box. So you'll need perhaps some insect or bird graphics, and then later on I'll show you some natural ones to make. And then, of course, your imagination. Now, here I wanted to start with something fairly simple, and that's just taking an element, using blocks of color from discarded boxes, and making flowers out of them. So I found this organic diced tomato box. I cut, I shaped some flowers out of that, as you can see, the bowl of diced tomatoes there. And I ended up, grouping them together so that it created this one solid element of three different flowers. And that's very easy to do. That's just with a pair of scissors, and if you can find a box that has all of these blocks of color, that's also a wonderful way to recycle or upcycle. Here, the paper towel or toilet tissue rolls do make great flowers as well. So what I did here was I just, as you can see, I just cut them. You're cutting the roll. It's very easy to cut. And then what you're doing is you're making petals. So each petal is a snip of the roll. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All different shapes can be made. The lower left-hand side upper flower is just taking that cut of the roll further downward and then just making vertical cuts along the perimeter and then folding them back. And what you notice is that you can take all of those different forms that you've made just with a paper towel roll and then overlap them so that you have on your right hand side just a series of different layers of those particular elements. And then coloring them also gives it another dimension. The lower right, at the center of the flower is a painted bottle cap. Here, I took a pine cone, and you may have seen this. Actually, it's become very popular on Instagram. I took a pine cone and then cut the central stem down a few individual plates, as you can see. And then what that does is it actually reveals a flower. So it's a very organic looking flower. You can paint it if you prefer, or leave it natural. And this is very easy to do. You need a sharp clipper or a lopper, and then you just keep going down the pine cone, and very, very easy to do. The central portion of the flower can be a smaller pine cone or some other element that you want to use. Here, I bought an egg carton that happened to be blue, which was wonderful. And I decided to use it and make flowers out of it. And that way is, again, very simple. You cut the egg carton through that taller cone. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cones. That cuts right across. And so what you're doing really is you're cutting out the individual cups, basically. You'll find that they're a little, have lots of different shapes to them. And what I did was I rounded off all of the edges of the cups so that they would look more like petals. And then I overlapped 2 cups into one another. So there you have it. You have a little tiny blue flower, a little forget-me-not. being an interior designer, I have quite a number of paint swatch samples, and you can also pick this up at your favorite and local paint store. What I did was I took, as you can tell, the paint sample cut into strips, and then I folded the strips in half and then stapled them, you know, um, three sections, stapled them all together and put a center piece so that it would look like a festive flower. And what's wonderful about this is that it can be a variety of colors. I mean, you never know what kind of colors are going to be created out of this fun way of recycling, you know, paint samples. Later on, I'll show you how all of those elements go together. Here is recycled bottle caps. They're given a new purpose with a little bit of an imagination. Again, a floral motif, just your center point, and then putting your bottle caps all around creates a tiny flower for your sign. The item on the right is from a car brochure. I found these little dots of color, and I decided to use that too and create again a flower using all those colors. The colors are a little bit muted. When making the sign, it's nice to use that also with some natural materials or some painted materials. And so that's also another way to use something around the house that you would never even think of using. So again, nothing is wrong. Everything is right. Everything should be fun, should be playful. Here, paper cups are turned into bursts of joy and with a simple pair of scissors. So I took some craft brown cups. They have a slightly waxed exterior, which is great so that it would hold up well. And as you can see, I cut vertical strips and then just pressed them down and again layered each painted floral, I guess you could call it, on top of one another. So that creates a very festive decoration as well for your sign. And again, you know, you can play with the length of the strips creates the size of the flower. So if you cut in very shallow, you'll get a smaller flower. If you cut in very deep, you'll get those starburst flowers. I think it's pretty easy to do. Here, milkweed pods are again a wonderful medium to use. They have also that little lovely feathery, and I don't know what it's called, but it's a little feathery organic material in the center. Those are wonderful for petals as well. But here I clustered them together in a group of 5. You can also do a group of 3. I like to use odd numbers because I find that they're more interesting, and also asymmetry in my signs. And so I think, you know, however you do it, again, it's up to you. This particular motif comes out so beautiful, and I put a pine cone in the center, again to stabilize it and also as decoration. So the pine cone flower is in the center, and then everything gets stabilized and attached with the glue gun. So here I've put it all together. As you can see, all the elements I just discussed are all in this one sign. And so what I've done is I like to actually work from left to right when I make my sign personally. So I like to begin at the top left and just kind of cluster my elements there and see what works for me and what doesn't. Then I move to the lower left and I cluster some more materials there. And then I try to balance out the colors on the upper right and lower left side, just to see a certain color balance that happens. Sometimes if you'll put too much red in one spot on the lower, let's say the lower left, you'll notice that when you're looking at your sign overall. So again, a balance of color is nice, a balance of natural materials. Um, and here I've used some graphics that I found online, and I gave them a little life to this, and quite a lot of color. Next thing one would do is to write the No Mo May, or No Mo April, or in Mindful May, or Mindful Spring, whatever you want to do. It's been called so many things now. So it's fun. I mean, it's all about what you want to achieve and how you want to present your sign to the world. I like to add a lot of color because I find that children are very attracted to the color. They'll go up to the sign, especially if it's three-dimensional. They'll want to touch it and look at it and wonder what it means. And I think it's nice. It's a curiosity piece instead of being so literal, you know. Again, here is a sign with just all natural materials. And you see the difference between the two. So only pine cones are milkweed pods, and then No Mo May written out in sticks and little pine cones. And that could be just enough. Here I've done a combination of the pine cone flowers in their natural state, and also the cups that I showed you in their natural state. And that's in the center photograph. To the right is adding a little pop of color. So you can see the difference there in terms of how the sign reads. Perhaps you like a little bit more color, perhaps you like it all natural. Here is, again, organic materials without the color or the graphics on the left. And then I added those colorful insect graphics and the painted pine cone flowers on the right. So you see the difference of adding a little bit of color for pop versus something very natural on the left-hand side. Again, putting the milkweed pods on the upper right and the lower left kind of builds a certain dynamic within the sign, so that your focus then is in the center of the sign. So you can see this imaginary pull between these two elements. And that's a reason sometimes I might repeat those elements on the lower left and the upper right, or vice versa, the upper left and the lower right. Here is the No Mo May. Again, lettering is written in tiny pine cones and sticks. I found this to be a lot of fun, and it can be anything you want. You can do all of this in the tiny pine cones, or you can do the sticks are actually a little bit it's less time consuming than the tiny pine cones, but you can see that the tiny pine cones create this sort of ring of texture and dimension, which stands out too against the sticks. So a combination of the two is always fun. On the right-hand corner, I show how the post is secured between the front decorative panel and the cardboard back panel, and that creates the stability that I need. And of course, then I always write the ReWild Long Island down vertically on my post. I like to, prop this against a tree outside, or you can, bury obviously the stick in the ground. You might want to take the sign in if you know that there's going to be, a heavy rainfall, or into a covered porch area or something covered, and then bring it back out again. These signs are, they're not meant to last forever. It's fleeting, just like spring. And I think that there's a beauty also to the fact that it doesn't last forever, and that we should appreciate it while it does last. And so, but these elements that are on the sign that you're seeing here, they lasted fairly well for the whole month. In fact, I've used some of those 8-cup motifs the following year, as well as my milkweed pods and also my pine cone flowers. They did last, and so that was wonderful to see. Now here you can control the time and effort required. Do you want to embellish it like on the left side, or do you want to keep it simple as it's shown on the right side? Of course, the variety and the number of materials used will govern your completion time. So as you can see, if you're feeling especially creative for a full day, you can really have a lot of fun with these signs. Or if you have limited time, you just make it very simple. Here is nature depicting nature. I've found these on the internet, which was really wonderful. I probably will do some of this next year. Also looking forward to next year. And this is a lot of fun. Pine cones with leaves to make butterflies, little spiders you can add to your sign. And of course, the acorns make wonderful floral motifs. This is interesting too. If you have a fabric laying around the house, or you have a leftover, a vinyl pattern tablecloth that's not too active in terms of its overall design, you can clad a piece of cardboard with that particular fabric or vinyl, and then use that as your backdrop. Here, that I worked with the blocks of color in the fabric to designate where I wanted to put my no mo may, as it's read on the right side. So that the fabric dictated where the lettering would work, and you can arrange any kind of fabric in that particular way. If your fabric has more activity at a certain place, perhaps you want that activity on the lower left or the upper right, or vice versa, so that your no mo may stands out in the center portion. As I had mentioned earlier, I have this decorative box that I receive in the mail, and when I opened it up at first, I noticed this amazing color inside, and leaves and elements of design that really would work well with all of the decorative pieces I wanted to place on the sign. So what I did was I opened up the box fully. Once you open up the box fully, whatever you might, collect, you can see where you need to modify it. For instance, it had, a length of tabs on either side that I streamlined and cut so that I was able to get a more of a vertical format in a rectangular shape. Again, you can do whatever you want. Perhaps you like that irregularity for your sign, and you want it to be interesting and have all these wonderful, elements that are uneven all around. I was able to, with those decorative motifs that I had just mentioned, cover some of the pieces that are opened, the tabs that are opened, and some of the irregularities around the perimeter, and came up with this. This is my sign for this year. I added little bumblebees inside my O's, and this is going to be company with my other wonderful signs I have on my lawn. So there you have it. And I thank you so much for listening. And I want, again, there's no set rules. Just have a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dan. This was wonderful, wonderful, lovely signs and really innovative.
I wanted to say when I participate and I observe my no mow, I find that with the tall grasses, I like to create an intentional overall effect. So I might, mow just a small path through the tall grasses. I'll make sure that edges are clean along a sidewalk so that again, um, it's more intentional rather than neglectful. Um, I think more participation in this means more acceptance, and with more acceptance means our pollinators are happy. So that's the overall idea of doing this is to be able to contribute just a little bit of time and effort to make someone notice and say, oh, what's that all about? And then Google it, look it up, and think about whether they want to do it or not.
A quick question for you here. The white flowers there I see in your orange sign, and the butterflies and bees. So the butterflies and the bees, you kind of how did you?
Yes, well, I Googled monarch butterfly and bumblebee, and then I got the images of those insects, and then I printed them out, and then I cut them. I backed them with a little bit of cardboard so that they were a bit more stationary.
Mhm.
So I used a glue stick for that, so that they had a little bit more, as I said, stability. And believe it or not, I've used butterflies. I've done this way for the last 3 years. They have lasted through through the May, through the month of May. So it's not a waste where you can only use it, once in the month of May. They can be reused. And I think that they added a little bit more color to the sign, and a bit of interest. They gather interest in terms of the overall effect.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the uh, milkweed pods. They're
That's
really
that's a
pretty.
lot of, and they're so expressive too, because each petal, I say in quote unquote, is a shape of its own. So no two are the same. And that also is the beauty of using all of these organic materials. No two are the same, and they can be reused.
Right. Have you ever dealt with the effect of the winds?
Uh, I have, and when I know that it's going to be a windy day, I'll uh, I'll take the sign and put it a little closer to my home. I also bury the stick fairly deeply, and I surround the stick at the base with some heavy rocks, and I prop it against something. For instance, this is a tree, and it remains fairly stable and upright. Um, you can nail it to something as well. If I don't like to nail trees, so I use a stick instead. But it certainly can be hung from a branch if there's an opening at the top. One can put a rope through it and hang it from a branch. and then stabilize the base by doing the same, and tying a rope or string at the bottom, or weight it down with a heavy rock. So it depends on how you want to display it. I prefer this method because uh, I've never had any problem with it falling. And again, if it's, I mean, I think last week we had that very windy day where it was incredible. If we ever had a day like that, I would obviously take the sign in, or keep it close to the to a structure.
I think those were some very excellent ideas too. After putting so much effort into making those beautiful signs, you don't want it blown away.
Exactly.
In that case, I'll thank you again for the wonderful, wonderful talk. Thanks for showing us some lovely ideas to recycle and reuse and, create these beautiful signs for our gardens.
It's wonderful. It would be wonderful to see all of these handmade signs around our communities and see what people come
Absolutely.
up with.
Absolutely.
It's very exciting too. And then, we learn from each other.
Yes,
Someone has
absolutely.
another technique that they want to share, that can be picked up along the way. And it's again, it's free. It's freedom. There's
Yes,
no right or wrong.
absolutely. Thank you again, Diana, for the lovely talk. Thank you, everyone.